Red Eyes Dragoon is obviously a very powerful card. It almost reads like a custom card made by a fan of the Yu-Gi-Oh anime. We're talking about a monster here that has so many different crazy effects that it can be a little bit scary when a player reads it for the very first time. It can't be destroyed by card effects, it can't be targeted by card effects, it gets to destroy monsters and do damage and gain attack, oh and also it has a built-in negation effect as well. But in the TCG format, as I mentioned a few times in past videos, this card, while still very good, has never quite seen the same amount of success as it did in the OCG. So in today's video, I want to talk about why that is. What this all comes down to is Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. And there was an interesting thing that happened here. So in the OCG, when this card was released, Dragoon was already banned. So we never really got to see which one of these cards was better in their format. However, in the TCG format, when Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer was released, we still had Dragoon legal, and right now Dragoon is still completely unrestricted in the TCG. So for TCG players that were already using Anaconda, they had to make a decision. Do they keep playing Red Eyes Fusion and Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, or do they switch over to Fusion Destiny and Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer? Now at this point, it's easy to talk about this debate because we have hindsight. We've had Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer out for many months, and the card is being played a lot more than Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. But back when it was first released in the TCG, a lot of people debated one way or another about which card was the better option. And it's important to mention here before we get into today's video that it's difficult talking about Red Eyes Dark Dragoon right now because while the card has not seen nearly as much play in the TCG as it did in the OCG, we're also at a moment where the branded structure deck just released and there is a pretty good combo for Dragoon with the new cards. So it's possible that on the horizon we could see Red Eyes Dark Dragoon start seeing a lot more play. Just in case you guys aren't familiar with the exact engine requirements of these fusion monsters, if you want to summon them generically, let me give you the quick rundown. So in both cases, while you can draw the fusion spell card, ideally you want to send the fusion spell card with Predaplant Anaconda, which can copy its effect. In the case of Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, you are sending Red Eyes Fusion to the graveyard to then send Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon to summon out the Dragoon. In the case of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, you are using Fusion Destiny to usually send either Destiny Hero Dasher or Destiny Hero Plasma plus Destiny Hero Celestial to the graveyard to then summon the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. The biggest difference between these two engines is that in one of them you want to draw the fusion spell instead of making Anaconda, while in the other you really do not want to draw that fusion spell ever. So with Red Eyes Fusion, this card has a pretty big restriction on it. It says you cannot normal or special summon other monsters the turn you activate this card. Now luckily, when you copy this card's effect with Anaconda, it doesn't count as activating the Red Eyes Fusion card, so you can ignore that restriction. But if you hard draw the Red Eyes Fusion in your deck, if you want to summon your Dragoon, you'll have to give up normal and special summoning for that entire turn besides that Dragoon. Fusion Destiny has a restriction that is pretty close to that, but it's different in one key way. It says for the rest of this turn after this card resolves, you cannot special summon monsters except Dark Hero monsters. The difference here is that this restriction is only for the rest of the turn after you use the Fusion Destiny, but with Red Eyes Fusion it counts before you use the card as well. This means when you draw Fusion Destiny, you can do your entire normal combo, and then at the very end you can simply activate the Fusion Destiny. And I think that we know that this is the big reason that Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is so strong, because out of both of these engines with both of these very powerful cards, Fusion Destiny at the moment is the only card in either engine that has actually made its way on the Forbidden and Limited list in the TCG. This card was so powerful to draw that Konami had to semi-limit it to 2 copies per deck. And this is a really big deal because with Red Eyes Fusion, people pretty much only ever played 1 copy per deck because they didn't want to draw it, they wanted to copy it with Anaconda. But with Fusion Destiny, people not only wanted to copy it with Anaconda, but also they played 3 copies of it because they really wanted to draw it. So it's not only about the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer versus Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, it's also about the greater engines that go with those fusion monsters. Speaking of engine requirements, when we're talking about Red Eyes Fusion, you are playing Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon, which in the average deck aren't going to get used for anything besides sending them with Red Eyes Fusion. But when you are playing Fusion Destiny, you get access to not only Destiny Hero Dasher, but also, more importantly, Destiny Hero Celestial. So the Dasher next turn could give you like a Saki special summon effect, which might be nice, but more importantly, importantly, the Celestial gives you 2 draws during the following turn, and that really does matter quite a bit. It's not only about dealing with the cards on the field, but it's also about dealing with those 2 free draws, which a lot of decks aren't going to be able to do after they had to deal with their opponent's board. And I think that this really brings up a good point and a big distinction between these two engines. In general, Red-Eyes Dark Dragoon is way better at allowing you to OTK the opponent. You have that great negation effect, which can maybe stop an opponent's big play, and then on your turn you can then pop 2 monsters and do a ton of damage and potentially OTK them. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, on the other hand, is not really about that. It's about card advantage over a long period of time. Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer's effect does not require you to discard any cards. Unlike Dragoon, it only requires you to destroy a card that you control. This conveniently combos with Destroyer Phoenix's other effect, where you can trigger its ability when it is destroyed to revive any Destiny hero from your graveyard during the next standby phase, which can, of course, bring itself back. And don't forget that right now, Artifact Scythe and Artifact Dagda are huge parts of the format, and in any deck that plays those cards, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is a lot better because it can actually pop the Artifact Scythe. Dragoon can't really do that, and that definitely is a big reason why Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is so good, but don't get me wrong, there are tons of decks out there that do not play Scythe that are still playing the Destroy Phoenix Enforcer. At this point, I want to compare and contrast a common situation that you might find yourself using either one of these cards to try and figure out the main differences between them when they're actually getting used. So for example, if you summon Dragoon and your opponent activates a card that you want to negate, you then have to discard a card out of your hand, and then let's say on the next turn they use another card that you want to negate, so you have to discard another card. At that point, you're not down on card advantage overall because you've negated 2 of your opponent's cards, but you are not necessarily ahead on card advantage either, unless you were able to get like a 2-for-1 trade with one of those negations. With Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer though, assuming you are able to pop itself with all of its activations, you are basically just getting free card advantage every single time because the Phoenix is coming back on the next standby phase while the card you destroyed probably isn't. So over the course of a longer duel, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer can give you a ton of card advantage the longer the game goes on. Not to mention you also have those 2 draws from Destiny Hero Celestial. So when you summon Dragoon, oftentimes you can find yourself in a situation where you might not have enough cards that you want to discard with its effect, especially right now where a lot of the cards in people's hands at the end of their turn are just going to be hand traps, and those already are negations. But with Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer, if you have that on board with a bunch of hand traps in hand, you not only have the hand traps as interruptions, but you also have the pop effect from the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. So I think on paper, while Phoenix might look worse than Red-Eyes Dark Dragoon because it doesn't have like the can't be targeted effect or the can't be destroyed effect or the popping effect that does damage or the negation effect, in reality, when we're talking about all of the different aspects of these 2 engines, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer does seem like a really good choice in formats that really want you to have card advantage, and right now we are definitely in one of those formats. Now obviously a negation usually is going to be better than a destruction effect, but we've seen very good destruction effects over the course of Yu-Gi-Oh's history. Zodiac Trident, for example, didn't have a negation effect, but that destruction effect was so good in that format. Popping a Fateful Adventure is basically the same as negating it because it's a continuous spell, and there are a variety of other continuous spells and field spells in the format that definitely are good to hit with the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. So while negations might be better in general than destruction, right now destruction effects are very good. In many ways, this is very similar to the discussions that I've had in my Why Nobody Plays videos. In those videos, I'm usually comparing cards that didn't see tournament play to cards that did see tournament play, but in this case, even though the debate is between 2 cards that are obviously very good and both have seen play, we are still using the same logic to determine which engine is better for current competitive Yu-Gi-Oh! It's not always about the flashiest monster on the field or which card has the most amount of crazy effects. Sometimes the sheer amount of versatility that another card might offer, even if it's less powerful in a vacuum, is actually worth more over the course of a longer tournament. And I think that's basically what we've seen here with the Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. I think the fact that Fusion Destiny is good to draw matters a lot. I think the Celestial draws are really important. I think the fact that Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer doesn't require a discard is really good in a format where a lot of people are playing a ton of hand traps, and I think that overall Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer right now has proven to be the better option for the majority of decks. Now, of course, you will still see Red Eyes Fusion in different decks. You know, Red Eyes decks are going to play that card, Dark Magician is going to play that card instead of Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer. Red Eyes Dark Dragoon is far from a bad card, and decks even besides Dark Magician and Red Eyes are still going to play it even now. But I think for the vast majority of decks and players, Destroyer Phoenix Enforcer is the go-to choice at the moment. Let me know in the comment section below. I'm curious what you guys are doing right now. Are you playing the Red Eyes Fusion engine, or are you playing the Fusion Destiny engine, or are you not playing either one because you don't like Anaconda? Anyway, that is all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll see you later. Thanks so much for watching. Goodbye.